Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to control everything, the more life slips through your fingers? We plan, we predict, we push, and yet the peace we're chasing always seems one step ahead, just out of reach. It's like trying to hold water in your palm. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. Most of us grow up believing that control equals safety, that if we could just manage every detail, our schedule, our emotions, the people around us, then maybe, just maybe, we'll finally feel calm. But the irony is, the need to control is often the very thing stealing our peace. Buddhist wisdom offers a radical shift. True freedom isn't found in control, it's found in letting go. And that sounds strange, doesn't it? In a world that praises discipline, hustle, and taking charge, surrender seems like giving up. But what if letting go isn't weakness? What if it's the beginning of real strength? Think about it. How much of your stress comes from clinging to things you were never meant to carry? The relationship you try to fix, even when it's hurting you. The version of yourself you're forcing because you think you should be further along. The constant worrying over outcomes you can't predict or prevent. In Zen, there's a saying, you only lose what you cling to. And those 8 words, so simple, hold an ocean of truth. You see, letting go isn't about carelessness. It's about clarity. It's not a passive act, but a conscious one. A choice to release the illusion of control so you can finally come home to yourself. This video isn't just about ideas, it's an invitation to pause, to breathe, to soften the grip you didn't even realize you were holding. Because when you stop resisting life, something incredible happens. Life starts to meet you differently. So if you're feeling exhausted by trying to hold it all together, stay with me. Let this be a quiet turning point. Not to escape the chaos, but to move through it with stillness, with wisdom, with peace that no longer depends on everything being perfect. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Observe without absorbing. In a world full of noise and constant emotional triggers, there is a quiet practice that changes everything. Observe, but do not absorb. Your mind doesn't have to be the storm. It can be the sky, the still, spacious awareness that holds whatever comes without being shaken by it. Emotions will rise, frustration, fear, disappointment. Thoughts will swirl like wind, some gentle, some violent. But none of these are you. They're simply passing weather patterns in the vast sky of your consciousness. The problem is, we forget. We confuse what we feel with who we are. We say, I am anxious, when in truth, anxiety is something you're experiencing, not something you are. This subtle difference changes everything. Imagine a cup of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, the dirt never settles. But if you place it down gently and leave it alone, clarity begins to return. That's what happens when you stop engaging with every emotion, every thought, every impulse. Instead of reacting, you begin to witness. This is mindfulness, not in theory, but in practice. It's what Buddhism has taught for centuries. Be the watcher, not the wave. You don't need to suppress your feelings. You don't need to be positive all the time. That's not realistic, and it's not the point. What matters is learning to be with your emotions without becoming your emotions. The next time anger rises, can you feel it fully, without needing to shout? The next time fear creeps in, can you breathe with it, without feeding the story behind it? That's the art of inner freedom. That's how you reclaim your peace. This doesn't mean you disconnect from life. In fact, it allows you to be more present, more engaged, because you're no longer hijacked by every passing mood. You begin to choose your responses instead of being ruled by them. In Zen, there's a saying, the moon is reflected in the water, but the water is not disturbed. Let your mind be like still water. Let life reflect through you without shaking your core. It's a quiet strength. And once you learn it, you realize peace isn't found by avoiding the storm. It's found in your ability to remain the sky, even while it rains. But what happens when you care deeply and it still drains you? When your energy is pulled in every direction and you don't know what's worth holding anymore? That's where we'll go next. Lesson 2. Protect your flame. Don't burn yourself out. In the last lesson, we explored what it means to observe without absorbing, to become the sky, not the storm. But what happens when it's not just your emotions overwhelming you? It's the sheer amount of things you care about, You want to be kind, supportive, present. You want to be informed, compassionate, and available. But somewhere along the way, your energy starts to fade. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about everything. It's a slow kind of exhaustion, a quiet kind of suffering, like a single candle trying to light every room in a mansion. Your flame begins to dim, and yet we keep trying. Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us, care deeply, but don't care blindly. Compassion without clarity turns into depletion. Love without limits becomes a doorway to burnout. In a culture that glorifies being always on, always reachable, always helpful, saying no feels selfish. But the truth is, knowing your limits is a sacred act of self-respect. You were never meant to carry everything. Your heart has depth, yes, but it also needs direction. So ask yourself, where is my care going? Is it nourishing me or draining me? Is it rooted in love or in guilt, fear, or obligation? We live in a time of endless noise, causes to fight for, people to please, content to consume, emotions to manage. And in trying to hold it all, we lose ourselves. But you don't have to fix every problem to be good. You don't have to answer every call to be kind. You don't have to stretch yourself thin to prove you care. Real compassion is focused, clear-eyed. It asks not, how much can I carry, but what is truly mine to hold. There's a Zen story about a monk who remained calm despite the world's chaos. When asked how, he smiled and said, because I know what's mine to carry and what isn't. That's not detachment. That's wisdom in motion. When you begin to set boundaries, not from fear, but from love, you start to burn brighter. Not from overextending, but from staying aligned. You stop giving your energy to every headline, every comment, every expectation. And instead, you begin to direct it toward what truly matters. Your values, your healing, your peace. So the next time you feel pulled in every direction, pause. Close your eyes. Ask yourself softly, is this mine to carry? If it is, carry it with care. If it's not, bless it and let it go. Protect your flame. Because when your light is steady, you don't just survive the dark, you help others find their way too. But what about the things we're still gripping tightly? Dreams, identities, people we fear losing? Let's look at what happens when we finally loosen that grip in the next lesson. Lesson 3. The tighter you hold, the more it hurts. Not all pain comes from the outside. In fact, some of the deepest suffering we carry doesn't come from what happens to us, but from how tightly we try to hold on when life asks us to let go. Buddha once said, you only lose what you cling to. Simple, powerful, and painfully true. You see, most of us aren't taught how to release. We're taught how to strive, how to control, how to push through discomfort. We hold our anger like armor, our regrets like anchors, our plans like promises the universe must keep. But life doesn't always obey our expectations. And when it doesn't, we suffer. Not just because it changed, but because we refuse to. Let me tell you a story. A traveler once crossed a river using a handmade raft. The current was strong, but the raft carried him safely to the other side. When he reached land, he felt grateful and afraid. That raft had saved his life. What if he needed it again? So he tied it to his back and carried it into the forest. At first, it wasn't too heavy, but over time, it slowed him down, wore him out, and made his journey harder than it had to be. He clung to something that was once useful, but was no longer necessary. We do this too. We cling to identities that no longer fit us. We grip tightly to relationships we've outgrown. We refuse to let go of plans, timelines, expectations, even when they're burning holes in our hearts. And the irony is, the tighter we hold, the more we hurt. Picture a burning coal. You're holding it in your palm, thinking that gripping tighter will somehow protect you. But the heat doesn't care about your intention. It just keeps burning. That's what it's like when we cling to what's meant to be released. Letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's seeing clearly what no longer serves your peace and choosing to set it down, even if it once meant everything. This is not a call to care less. It's a call to hold things with open hands, to love without possession, to feel deeply without losing yourself in the fire. So the next time you feel the urge to cling, ask gently, Is this raft still helping me? Or am I just afraid to cross without it? Because sometimes the real healing begins not when life changes, but when you do. And if you've ever wondered what it truly means to let go, not just in thought, but in the heart, that's what we'll explore. Next, Lesson 4, the wisdom of knowing. When to stop. In the modern world, we're taught to keep going, push through, hustle harder. Quitting is frowned upon. Stopping is mistaken for weakness. But in Zen Buddhism, there's a quiet principle that stands in gentle defiance of this madness. Do not advance, do not retreat, just stop at the right moment. We are so conditioned to chase more knowledge, more control, more success, that we rarely pause to ask, where am I heading? Is this still the right path? The truth is, when we keep walking blindly, we may be walking away from ourselves. Stopping doesn't mean giving up. Stopping means waking up. Imagine driving a car with no brakes on a winding mountain road. That's what life feels like when we forget how to stop. The stress, the burnout, the anxiety, it's not always because life is too hard. Sometimes it's because we're too afraid to pause. Zen wisdom reminds us, when you stop, you can see. Stop to breathe. Stop to notice. Stop to return to the center you've drifted away from. Maybe you're holding on to a relationship that's long past its lesson. Maybe your job brings only exhaustion, not growth. Maybe your schedule is so full, you've forgotten how it feels to be alive. And yet, you carry on, out of habit, out of fear, or because the world tells you to. But here's what Zen quietly teaches. What no longer nourishes you is silently draining you. When we cling to what is already dead, we make no room for what wants to be born. Stopping is not a sign of weakness. It's a conscious, courageous act of wisdom. Like pruning a tree so it can blossom again, we let go not out of despair, but out of trust. Trust that space will invite renewal, that silence will restore clarity. And in those sacred pauses, we meet ourselves again. Because the moment you dare to stop, not tomorrow, not next year, but now, you begin to reclaim the presence that's been quietly waiting beneath all the doing. And from that stillness, something else begins to rise. Something we'll uncover in the next step. Lesson 5, master the pause. Where true power begins, in life, moments often strike without warning. An angry word, a sharp judgment, a broken plan, and before we know it, we snap back. We say things we regret, do things we didn't intend. But in Zen teaching, there's a sacred pause that changes everything. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our power, our freedom, our peace. We often live as if we are at the mercy of the world, pulled by emotions, hijacked by reactions. But that's not the only way. With practice, we can respond instead of react. The difference may seem subtle, but it shapes entire lives. Reaction is quick, automatic, fiery. It's the ego flaring up in defense. Response, on the other hand, is grounded in presence. It rises from a calm center that has seen the emotion, acknowledged it, but not become it. Imagine you're in a crowded street. Someone bumps into you. Instinct shouts, "Hey, watch it!" But awareness breathes, pauses, sees the situation clearly, and maybe says nothing at all. Or speaks, but with clarity, not chaos. That single breath makes all the difference. The Buddha once said, "Do not let the behavior of others steal your peace." But this peace is not given, it is chosen. Every time you take one mindful breath instead of exploding, you are choosing peace. You're claiming your power back, not power over others, but power over yourself. To respond from awareness is not to suppress emotion, it's to honor it without letting it rule you. It's the strength of a still lake, reflecting everything, disturbed by nothing. And that stillness is cultivated, one breath at a time. So the next time anger rises, or fear rushes in, or your pride gets poked, pause, even for just a few seconds. In that pause is where your freedom lives. Not freedom from emotion, but freedom from being controlled by it. Let that space expand. Let that awareness deepen. Because those who master the pause master their lives. And in that mastery, a new kind of strength begins to awaken. True strength isn't about reacting faster. It's about staying calm in the eye of the storm. But there's something even harder than silence. Knowing when to stop before you lose yourself. That's the quiet wisdom we'll explore in the next lesson. Lesson 6. Surrender the attachment, embrace the flow. We often think freedom lies in getting what we want, but in truth, the deepest freedom begins the moment we stop clinging to how we think life should be. We cling to expectations, to outcomes, to old versions of ourselves, believing they define our worth. But the more tightly we hold on, the more life begins to feel like a struggle. Buddhism teaches that suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from our resistance to what is. Imagine holding onto a rope that's being pulled by a current. The tighter you grip, the more it burns your hands. Letting go doesn't mean you drown. It means you stop fighting the current and begin to float. Just like a leaf carried by the river, you're no longer trapped by direction or speed. You simply flow with what is, moment to moment. Letting go of attachment is not about indifference. It's about trust. The trust that life unfolds in ways far beyond what the mind can predict or control. The Zen masters call this Wu Wei, effortless action, a way of moving with life rather than against it. So ask yourself gently, what am I gripping that is already trying to leave? A relationship? An identity? An idea of how things should be? What if your peace doesn't depend on changing the situation, but on changing your relationship to it? As the saying goes, letting go isn't giving up. It's waking up. And sometimes waking up simply means realizing that peace has been waiting for you, just on the other side of attachment. And if that's true, what kind of life might open up when you finally release your grip? Letting go frees us from the illusion of control. But what comes after we release our grip? When the attachments fall away, what remains is not emptiness, but presence. Not knowing what comes next can be terrifying until you realize that right now is all there ever truly is. And perhaps the greatest act of awakening isn't to chase a better future, but to return fully, gently, to this very moment. And that return to the here and now is where the next lesson begins. Lesson 7. The power of returning to the present moment. We spend so much of our lives running towards success, away from pain, chasing something better, or trying to undo something we regret. And yet, no matter how fast or far we go, peace remains in one place only, here. Zen doesn't ask you to become someone new. It simply asks, where are you now? Not mentally, not in the story you keep replaying, not in the fear of what might happen, but right now, in this breath, in this body, in this room. The truth is, we don't suffer because of the present moment. We suffer because we're constantly pulled away from it. We get trapped in stories of who we used to be, what we should have done, or what might go wrong next week. But the present moment is rarely a problem. It's often just simple. A sound, a breeze, a breath. Think about this. Have you ever sat in silence and suddenly heard the birds again? Or felt your breath without needing to change it? That's not a coincidence. It's what happens when you return to what is. In Zen, presence isn't a technique. It's a way of seeing, a way of being. When you're truly here, something remarkable happens. The need to control softens. You no longer fight reality. You flow with it. You stop asking, what's wrong with this moment? And you begin to notice, nothing is missing. Nothing is broken. You're not a problem to solve. You're a human being, living, breathing, awakening. So the next time you catch yourself spinning in thought, pause, feel your feet on the floor, take one conscious breath, look around, notice that you're already home. And perhaps that's the greatest secret. Peace isn't something you need to find. It's something you return to. The only question is, are you willing to stay long enough to feel it? Life doesn't need you to control everything in order to return to peace. It simply asks you to gently let go of the right thing at the right time. Just like a boat doesn't have to row against the current to be alive. Sometimes it only needs to release the oars and let the river lead the way. Letting go isn't defeat. It's not retreat. It's a return to yourself, to your breath, to the quiet and profound beauty of the present moment. When you no longer strain to control everything, something strange happens. Life begins to flow more smoothly, not because you're doing more, but because you're interfering less. Maybe what we need isn't more advice. Maybe we just need more space. Enough to hear what we've always known. You don't have to do anything big. Just pause long enough to notice where you are and what no longer belongs in your life. And if you carry just one thing from this journey, let it be this. Peace doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go. At the right place, at the right time. When you finally know you don't need to cling anymore, your heart begins to soften. Your breath becomes lighter. And life starts to open in a way it never could when you were trying to control it all. If somewhere inside you feels weary, exhausted from holding it together for too long, know this. You are not alone, and you don't have to heal all by yourself. If you see yourself on this path of returning, of releasing, of awakening, subscribe to the channel. Not just to learn something new, but to remember what truly matters. Stillness, presence, and a soul finally allowed to come home.